The awakening storm. The void between stars had never seemed so beautiful to Admiral Vextar as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Through the massive viewport, the small blue world of Earth hung like a precious gem against the black canvas of space. His scaled hands, each ending in razor-sharp claws, drummed rhythmically against the command console as he studied the primitive planet before him. Such a lovely little world, Vextar mused, his voice carrying the subtle hiss that marked all members of the Zephyrian Empire. It seems almost cruel to subjugate something so innocent. His second-in-command, Sub-Admiral HFY, approached. With measured steps, the younger Zephyrian scales were a darker shade of emerald, marking him as nobility from the outer rim worlds. The preliminary scans are complete, Admiral. The humans appear to be exactly as our intelligence suggested. Vextar turned his attention to the holographic display that materialized above the command console. Images of Earth's major cities flickered past: New York with its towering skyscrapers, London with its ancient architecture mixed with modern buildings, Tokyo with its neon-lit streets bustling with activity. To Zephyrian eyes, it all looked charmingly primitive. "Look at them," Vextar said with something approaching fondness. "They still burn fossil fuels for energy. Their fastest ships barely reach their own moon. They fight endless wars over invisible lines on maps." He paused, watching a feed of human traffic moving through city streets. "They're like children playing with toys, completely unaware that adults have arrived." HFY nodded, though something in his expression suggested unease. "Admiral, our Cultural Analysis Division has noted some unusual patterns in human behavior. They recommend a more cautious approach." The Admiral's eyes, large and multifaceted like those of an insect, fixed on his subordinate with sudden intensity. "Unusual patterns? Explain." "They're entertainment media, sir. It's filled with stories about creatures like us. Alien invasions, first contact scenarios, galactic wars. They seem to spend considerable time imagining what they would do if faced with a superior species." Vextar laughed, a sound like wind, through dry leaves. "Fantasy, HFY. Children's stories to help them sleep at night. The fact that they dream of such things only proves how unprepared they are for reality." He gestured toward the tactical display showing Earth's defenses. A few orbital satellites, some primitive missiles, aircraft that can barely break the sound barrier. "We've conquered worlds with 10 times their military capability." What neither Zephyrian officer knew was that their conversation was being monitored by a network of quantum sensors that humanity had deployed throughout the solar system decades earlier. Deep beneath the Colorado Rockies, in a facility that officially didn't exist, Commander Sarah Chen sat in the dim glow of dozens of monitoring screens, listening to every word. Chen was 43 years old, with prematurely gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She'd spent the last 15 years of her life preparing for this moment, though she'd hoped it would never come. Around her, technicians and analysts worked with quiet efficiency, their faces illuminated by the blue light of their displays. "How long have they been watching us?" asked Dr. Elena Vasquez, the chief scientist of what the world knew only as the Deep Space Research Initiative. In reality, the DSRI was humanity's most classified project, born from the discovery of wreckage from an alien spacecraft that had crashed in the Antarctic ice 40 years earlier. Based on their communication patterns, at least 6 months, Chen replied, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were facing. "Maybe longer. They've been studying our broadcast signals, analyzing our technology, planning their approach." Dr. Vasquez pulled up another screen showing the alien fleet in detail. 17 massive ships, each the size of a city, moving with the confident precision of an empire that had never known defeat. "Their shielding technology is impressive. Energy weapons that can vaporize our strongest metals. Faster than light travel that puts our best theoretical physics to shame." "But they made one crucial mistake," Chen said, a slight smile touching her lips for the first time in days. "They assumed we were as primitive as we appear. The discovery of the alien wreckage decades earlier had changed everything for humanity, though the general population never knew it. The crashed ship had been studied by the world's greatest minds, its technology reverse-engineered and improved upon. What the aliens saw as primitive fossil fuel consumption was actually a carefully maintained facade, hiding the fact that most of Earth's real infrastructure now ran on exotic matter reactors based on alien designs. The primitive satellites orbiting Earth were actually sophisticated sensor networks capable of detecting ships across multiple star systems. What appeared to be simple military bases were actually launch facilities for weapons that could challenge anything the galaxy had to offer. And deep in the hidden shipyards of the moon's far side, humanity had built something that would soon shock the Zephyrian Empire to its core. "Send the activation signal," Chen ordered. "Wake up the Redemption." Captain Marcus Rivera felt the subtle vibration through the hull as the HSV Redemption powered up for the first time in 3 years. The ship had been built in absolute secrecy, using technology that officially didn't exist, crewed by men and women who had volunteered for a mission that might never come. Now, as alarms sounded throughout the hidden lunar facility, Rivera knew that humanity's greatest test had arrived. The Redemption was beautiful in the way that only a weapon designed with absolute purpose could be beautiful. Sleek and angular, its hull was composed of materials that bent light around them, making the ship nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Its weapon systems were based on principles that the Zephyrians wouldn't recognize until it was too late. "Captain," Lieutenant James Park called from the communication station. His voice carried the tension that all of them felt. "We're receiving authorization codes from Earth Command. All systems are green for launch." Rivera nodded, settling into his command chair. Around him, his crew of 50 worked with the efficiency of people who had trained for this moment their entire careers. They were humanity's elite, volunteers who had given up normal lives to serve on a ship that might never see battle. Now, they were about to justify every sacrifice they had made. "Take us out of dock," Rivera ordered. "Engines to minimum power. I want us invisible until we're ready to make our statement." On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Admiral Vextar was reviewing the final invasion plans when HFY suddenly stiffened at his sensor station. "Admiral," the sub-admiral said, his voice carrying a note of confusion. "I'm detecting unusual energy readings from behind the human planet's moon." Vextar barely glanced up from his tactical display. "Mining operation, perhaps, or some primitive research station. Focus on the important targets, HFY. I want their major population centers mapped for the demonstration strike." The demonstration strike was a Zephyrian tradition. When conquering a new world, they would destroy one major target to show their power, then offer the survivors a choice: submit or face total annihilation. It was psychological warfare perfected over centuries of conquest, and it had never failed. "Target the human facility they call the International Space Station," Vextar ordered. "A simple, clean destruction that will show them we mean business, without causing massive casualties. We're civilized conquerors, after all." The energy beam that struck the ISS was precise and devastating. The station simply ceased to exist, vaporized in an instant along with its crew of 12. The message was clear. Resistance was futile. What Vextar didn't expect was humanity's response. Within hours, every major news network on Earth was broadcasting the same message. World leaders who had spent decades arguing over everything suddenly spoke with one voice. The message was simple and delivered by a woman most of the world had never seen before. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Coalition," she said, standing before cameras in what appeared to be a simple military briefing room. Behind her, screens showed images that made viewers around the world gasp in amazement. Starships, weapons, technology that belonged in science fiction movies. "For 40 years we have been preparing for this day," Chen continued. "The attack on our space station was an act of war against all humanity. Our response will be proportional and decisive. To the aliens currently threatening our world, you have made a grave error in judgment. You saw what you expected to see, but you failed to understand what we truly are." Admiral Vextar watched the broadcast from his command chair, his confidence beginning to waver for the first time in his long military career. "How?" he whispered. "How do they have ships? Our intelligence showed no space-based military capability." Admiral. Krexhai called out, his voice tight with alarm. New contact emerging from behind the human moon. It's moving directly toward us. On the main viewer, the HSV Redemption dropped its stealth fields and appeared like a ghost materializing in space. It was smaller than any ship in the Zephyrian fleet, but there was something about its design that immediately set alarm bells ringing in Vextar's mind. This wasn't the primitive construction he had expected. This was the work of a species that understood war. One ship, Vextar said, trying to reclaim his confidence. They send one ship against our entire fleet. Captain Rivera's voice came across, the communication channels calm and clear. Zephyrian fleet, this is Captain Marcus Rivera of the human starship Redemption. You have committed an act of war against the people of Earth. You have approximately 60 seconds to begin immediate withdrawal from our solar system, or we will consider your continued presence an act of aggression requiring a military response. Vextar felt his scales flush with anger. The audacity of these humans. Open fire, he ordered. Destroy that impudent little ship. Show them the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire. 7 of his ships turned their weapons toward the Redemption and fired in perfect coordination. Energy beams that could vaporize mountains struck the human vessel from multiple angles. The Redemption didn't even slow down. Impossible, Krexhai breathed. Our weapons had no effect. They're shielding technology. It's deflecting everything we throw at them. Captain Rivera's voice came across the channels again, still calm but now carrying an undertone of steel. You had your chance, Admiral. Now you get to learn why it's dangerous to underestimate humanity. The Redemption's weapon systems came online, and suddenly Vextar understood that everything he thought he knew about this species was wrong. The humans hadn't been caught off guard by their arrival. They had been waiting, planning, preparing for a war that they had always known would come. And now, in the cold void between worlds, that war was about to begin. The price of underestimation. The silence that followed Captain Rivera's words seemed to stretch across the void like a held breath. Admiral Vextar stared at the human ship on his main viewer, trying to process what had just happened. 7 of his most powerful vessels had fired simultaneously at the small craft, and their weapons had simply stopped. Not reflected, not absorbed, but somehow rendered completely ineffective. Status report, Vextar demanded, his voice betraying none of the uncertainty churning in his mind. Sub-Admiral Krexhai worked frantically at his console, scales shifting color with stress. Unknown, sir. Our energy beams appeared to strike the human vessel, but sensor readings show no impact, no energy discharge, nothing. It's as if our weapons ceased to exist the moment they reached their ship. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the engagement from the hidden command center beneath Colorado, a satisfied smile playing across her lips. Quantum disruption fields, she explained to Commander Chen. We learned about the principle from the crashed ship decades ago, but it took us 30 years to make it work. Any directed energy weapon that enters the field has its quantum coherence destroyed at the subatomic level. In simple terms? Chen asked, though she already knew the answer. Their weapons become nothing but harmless light the moment they touch our ships, Vasquez replied. But the real surprise is yet to come. On the bridge of the Redemption, Captain Rivera felt the familiar calm that came with years of training and preparation. His crew worked with quiet efficiency around him, each person focused on their task with the knowledge that humanity's survival might depend on their performance in the next few minutes. Lieutenant Park, Rivera said to his communications officer, open a channel to the Zephyrian flagship. Let's give Admiral Vextar one more chance to make the right choice. The main screen flickered, showing the interior of the alien command bridge. Vextar stood rigid, his scaled features unreadable, but Rivera could see the uncertainty in the alien's large, multifaceted eyes. Admiral, Rivera began, his tone conversational despite the circumstances. You seem surprised that your weapons were ineffective. I suppose your intelligence didn't prepare you for the possibility that we might have defenses you couldn't understand. Vextar's claws extended slightly, a sign of aggression among his species. Explain yourself, human. What trickery is this? No trickery, Rivera replied calmly. Just 40 years of very careful preparation. You see, Admiral, you made the same mistake that many species have made throughout history. You assumed that what you could see was all there was to see. Lieutenant Park leaned forward at his station. Captain, sensors show the alien fleet is moving to surround us. They're trying to box us in. Rivera nodded without taking his eyes off the alien admiral. Let them come, Lieutenant. Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to let your enemy make the first mistake. On the Eternal Dominion, Vextar was rapidly losing patience. His fleet had conquered 17 worlds for the Empire, and he had never encountered a species that could simply ignore his weapons. It was impossible, it was humiliating, and it would not be tolerated. Deploy the entire fleet in attack formation, he ordered. If one ship won't fall, then we'll use every weapon we have. Concentrate all fire on that impudent vessel until there's nothing left but atoms. Krexhai hesitated. Sir, perhaps we should attempt to analyze their defensive technology first. If we could understand how their— No! Vextar slammed a clawed hand onto his command console. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We don't retreat before primitives with one lucky ship. All vessels prepare for maximum coordinated barrage. Rivera watched the alien ships move into position with something approaching sympathy. Admiral, I'm going to tell you something that might save both our species a lot of unnecessary bloodshed. Humans have a saying, don't poke the sleeping bear. Do you know what it means? Vextar's response was to signal his fleet. 17 ships, each carrying enough firepower to devastate a planet, opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Redemption lit up like a small star as hundreds of energy weapons struck the human vessel from every conceivable angle. When the light faded, the Redemption hung in space exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. It means, Rivera continued as if the devastating attack had never happened, that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one that looks harmless while it's sleeping. In the Earth Command Center, Commander Chen watched the display with growing concern. The aliens' response to their demonstration was exactly what she had feared. Instead of retreating or attempting diplomacy, they were escalating. She turned to Dr. Vasquez with a heavy heart. Elena, how long can the Redemption maintain those defenses? Indefinitely, as long as the exotic matter reactors hold out, Vasquez replied. But Sarah, you know as well as I do that defense alone won't end this. They're not going to stop until we force them to stop. Chen nodded grimly. She had hoped it wouldn't come to this, but Admiral Vextar was proving to be exactly the kind of commander who would rather see his fleet destroyed than admit defeat. Send the authorization, she said quietly. Phase 2 is a go. Captain Rivera received the signal from Earth and felt a moment of sadness for what was about to happen. The Zephyrians had been given every opportunity to withdraw with their honor intact. Their refusal to do so left humanity with no choice. Lieutenant Park, open a channel to all Zephyrian vessels, Rivera ordered. Channel open, sir, Rivera's voice, carried across space to every ship in the alien fleet. This is your final warning. Withdraw from our solar system immediately, or face the consequences of your aggression. You have 30 seconds to begin retreat procedures. Admiral Vextar's response was predictable. All ships continuous barrage. Don't stop firing until that ship is space dust. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed everything they had. Energy beams, plasma torpedoes, antimatter missiles, weapons that could crack continents, all focused on the single human ship. The barrage continued, for 3 full minutes, turning the space around the Redemption into a storm of destructive energy. When it finally stopped, the human ship remained exactly where it had been. Impossible, Krexhai whispered. Nothing could survive that. Nothing. Rivera's voice came across the communication channels one last time, no longer calm but filled with the weight of necessity. You had your chance, Admiral. Now you get to learn what happens when you threaten humanity's children. The Redemption's weapon systems came online for the first time, and suddenly the very nature of the engagement changed. What had been a one-sided assault became something far more dangerous. The human ship fired once, a single beam of coherent, Energy that moved faster than the Zephyrian sensors could track struck the nearest alien vessel. The ship didn't explode. It didn't burn. It simply ceased to exist, as if it had never been there at all. What just happened to the stellar claw? Vextar demanded, staring at the empty space where one of his destroyers had been moments before. HFY was frantically checking his instruments. I don't know, sir. One moment it was there, the next, nothing. No debris, no energy signature, no trace that it ever existed. Rivera's voice cut across the channel. Molecular disintegration beam. We break the atomic bonds holding matter together at the quantum level. Your ship and everything in it simply returns to its component atoms. The word struck fear into every Zephyrian heart. They were warriors, members of an empire that had conquered star systems, but they had never faced an enemy that could simply erase them from existence. Sir, HFY said urgently, recommend immediate withdrawal. We're facing technology beyond our current understanding. But Vextar was beyond reason now. His pride, his position, everything he had built his identity around was crumbling. No retreat, he screamed. Ram that ship. All vessels, full speed. If we can't destroy it with weapons, we'll crush it with our hulls. Lieutenant Park looked up from his station in alarm. Captain, they're coming right at us. All ships ramming speed. Rivera nodded calmly. Dr. Vasquez warned us this might happen. Some species prefer suicide to surrender. Activate the gravity well generators. Space around the Redemption suddenly twisted. The Zephyrian ships, charging forward at maximum speed, found themselves caught in a gravitational field that made movement impossible. They hung suspended in space like insects trapped in amber, their engines straining uselessly against forces they couldn't comprehend. What have you done to us? Vextar's voice carried a note of panic for the first time. We've given you time to think, Rivera replied. Admiral, I'm going to make you an offer that will only be available once. Stand down your weapons, power down your engines, and we'll escort you out of our solar system. You can return to your empire with the knowledge that humans are not the easy conquest you expected. In the command center on Earth, Commander Chen held her breath. This was the moment of truth. Either the Zephyrians would accept the offer and leave, or humanity would be forced to destroy an entire fleet to protect itself. For a long moment, there was only silence across the communication channels. Then HFY's voice cut through the tension. Admiral, our fleet is completely immobilized. Their technology is clearly superior to ours. Perhaps wisdom lies in accepting their offer. Vextar turned to his second-in-command with fury in his multifaceted eyes. Wisdom? We are representatives of the Zephyrian Empire. We don't negotiate with primitives. With respect, sir, HFY replied quietly. These are clearly not primitives. The debate that followed was heard by every human, listening to the communication channels. Argument, counter-argument. The slow breakdown of certainty in the face of impossible reality. Finally, Admiral Vextar spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. Human captain, he said formally, the Zephyrian fleet accepts your offer. We will withdraw from your system. Rivera felt a surge of relief. Thank you, Admiral, that was the wise choice. We're deactivating the gravity field now. You're free to leave. As the alien fleet slowly turned and began to leave the solar system, Vextar made one final transmission to the Redemption. Captain Rivera, the Admiral said, I must ask, how long have your people possessed such technology? Rivera considered the question carefully before answering. We've had 40 years to prepare, Admiral. But the real answer is that we've had our entire history. Humans learned long ago that the universe is dangerous, and the only way to survive is to be more dangerous than anything that threatens us. And if we had not attacked your space station, Vextar asked, if we had approached in peace, then you would have found us to be the most loyal allies you could imagine, Rivera replied honestly. Humans are tribal, Admiral. Threaten the tribe, and we become your worst nightmare. Protect the tribe, and we'll follow you to the ends of the galaxy. As the last Zephyrian ship disappeared into faster-than-light travel, Captain Rivera finally allowed himself to relax. The crisis was over, Humanity had survived, and perhaps most importantly, they had done so without becoming the monsters their enemies expected them to be. In the command center beneath Colorado, Commander Chen watched the alien fleet's departure with mixed emotions. They had won, but at what cost? Word of humanity's capabilities would spread throughout the galaxy. Other species would come, some as enemies, others as potential allies. What happens now? Dr. Vasquez asked. Chen looked at the displays showing Earth's hidden fleets, the secret bases on Mars and Europa, the defensive networks that most of humanity didn't even know existed. Now we prepare for whatever comes next, she said. Because this was just the beginning. High above Earth, the HSV Redemption turned toward home, its mission complete. In the depths of space, a new chapter in human history had been written. The age of hiding was over. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same.